Going live. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another Leadership Live with JJ Hardy and me, Chris Piankowski. JJ, how you doing? Happy
Man, I'm
Friday.
good. Oh, happy Friday. I'm good, man. It's the end of the week. Who knows what this weekend has in store? Probably auto repair and out here with my vehicles again. I don't like to buy new vehicles, and I think that's starting to kick me in the butt. But otherwise, things are going extremely well. What about you?
Awesome. No complaints here. We are finally past the heat wave in Philadelphia. So happy for that. Doing a car show tomorrow with my oldest son. So that'll be fun.
Are you are you providing an automobile for the car show, or are you just attending?
Yeah, no, we'll be going in my Mustang.
Really?
Yep. He and I have been hitting the car show circuit this season. So yeah, I think tonight I'll give the Mustang a wipe down so that first thing in the morning we can get on the road and go show it off.
What year is the Mustang?
It is a 90. It's a 25th anniversary. And I've owned it since 1995.
Wow.
So I bought the car when I was 21, have owned it ever since. It is 100% original. And you don't find many like that. It's a 34-year-old car. So
Right. And it's one of the good years though, too, because in the mid 80s, I know that those were a little bit wonky looking.
yeah. So this one, not all of them have the 25th anniversary badge, so it's a special edition. And yeah, that's been my baby I took my wife on our first date in that car. That's how long I've had it.
Gosh. I have nothing that I can say that about. That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's fun. And I'm happy that at least one of my boys is into cars like I am. So it's something that we get to bond over.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are we talking about today, man?
Today we are talking about decisiveness. And it's a tricky topic. And I think I say it's tricky because you and I often talk about allowing our people to come up with the plans, right? Leaders provide the strategic vision, and then we allow our people to come up with the tactical plan of how to achieve it. So I think that some people may take that to mean that leaders leave the decisions up to their people. To an extent, that's correct. But decisiveness is so important from a leadership standpoint that without it, it can really lead to failure. But before I stay on my soapbox for too long, what are your thoughts on decisiveness from a leadership standpoint?
Well, so that it's multifaceted. So when I
Mhm.
think of decisiveness, there's the decisiveness from the top down. I mean, there's a filter there, right?
Yep.
Before your people even see what tasks are coming their way, you have to have those higher level conversations to decide what's coming to you and help your boss understand what should go to your team. And maybe it's a group meeting where it could go to other teams as well. And you have to be clear when you're talking about that, because otherwise you could lose your level of influence with your employer. However, there's the other side. You're talking about the team. Well, the team doesn't get to see that, but they do see when tasks are delegated down. And so there's a part of the process where they're going to be unsure how to proceed.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point they're going to come to you during that, and they'll probably work it out amongst each other for a lot of it, but they're going to come to you with questions. If you're just fumbling around and you sound like an idiot and you don't know what to say and you never get back to them when they do have a question, then that's where decisiveness comes in. And I think that it's really important to understand that as a leader, we may not have all the answers, but we do have to have answers.
Yeah.
And when we tell our people that we got to get back to them because we don't have it in that moment, then we actually do have to get back to them because it creates trust. So decisiveness, that's kind of where it sits in my head.
Yeah, I agree with that. The trust building, and you and I have talked about the importance of trust and not only building and but maintaining that. But around the decisiveness part, that's Where it's critical from a leadership standpoint, in my opinion, is when your team has conflicting information, they're maybe torn on how to move forward. There are times that the leader needs to step in and be that tiebreaker, right?
Yeah.
And okay, all right, everybody, I've heard everything that you've laid out. I've heard all the options, heard everything. Now, this is how we're going to move forward, go in this direction, and let's rock and roll. And the other time is from a not from a leader standpoint per se, like title wise, but when you're amongst peers and when you see that we're stagnant right now, like we are spinning our wheels, that's where your leadership needs to step up and say, okay, everybody, we need to do something. We need to take a step. Um, so that's those are two ways that I see decisiveness being very important. Tiebreaker as the leader and kind of just stepping up amongst a group of peers to be able to move things forward and get you off of that hamster wheel.
Yes, sir. And I think that it goes into many other areas as well. So let's, from a conflict management standpoint, when there's a problem, an actual problem in the workplace where you are going to have to step in because things are difficult, or maybe there's an argument between a couple of employees, or maybe there's a potential injury, and I mean that's conflict too. So I mean, all of those things where you have to jump in there. How uncomfortable is that? But when you are that leader, it's crucial that you put all of your I don't know what to your lack of confidence to the side, and you jump in there,
Yeah.
and you not only start the conversation, but you figure out how to move forward, and there's going to be a decision that has to be made there. And so that decision is, well, that's decisiveness. So I mean that's another area where I could see, and by the way, conflict is, as I said, it's many different things. It's not just injury, it's not just employees fighting. It could be maybe an outside source coming in and causing problems at your work. I mean, it could be many different things, but we're looked at for all of that. And we have to have the answers. If it's not the right one, guess what? That's okay. But figure it out quickly, because at some point you might need to steer that ship in a different direction. But sometimes just making a decision to get us through in that moment is exactly what needs to be done.
You just mentioned something that I want to kind of stick on for a second. And you said the word confidence. How often does confidence affect someone's ability to be decisive or indecisive?
Mm. I think actually always. So confidence, I think we've had a call about this before, but the way you build confidence is through repetition and just doing something enough to make yourself comfortable with it.
Mhm.
And if you're not comfortable with something, you tend to be decisive. But as a leader, there are a lot of things that are uncomfortable that pop up that you haven't dealt with before. And so being willing to pivot and just figure it out in that moment and still make the decision is very important. So it's almost like that. This brings me back to my military days where I'd show up for 0630 formation and have to do PT. Well,
Mhm.
you may not have any motivation in that time, but for the sake of others, you got to find that false motivation.
That's right.
Sometimes you got to find that false confidence too. That way, at least you're inspiring those other people to say, hey, look, oh my gosh, he knows what to do, or she knows what to do, or whatever the case may be. Because if you don't have any confidence, they're going to kind of dip their toes in the water when you say, let's execute on this, instead of going all in, because JJ is not going to steer me wrong, or Chris is not going to steer me wrong.
Mhm. The other thing too that I'll talk to people about when it's apparent that it's a confidence issue that is preventing them from making decisions. For whatever reason, they're not comfortable to make that decision. They don't feel like they've got all the facts, or people can easily go down a rabbit hole. If they're not confident, they can easily go down a rabbit hole of excuses as to why they're not taking action. And one of the things that I'll advise people on is, what is the smallest action that you can take? Something that has very little risk, but it moves you off of the X, for lack of a better word. It moves you out of the hamster wheel, even if it's just a foot. Let's take the smallest action and then build on that. You know, I think that people get into the analysis paralysis, and that prevents decisiveness.
Yep.
And they're thinking about all 100 steps that need to be taken in order to achieve a goal, where in all likelihood, by step 10, 11 through 100 are going to change.
They don't matter. Not really.
So it's like, all right, let's take the first step and then the second step, start to learn, start to iterate, and just continue that momentum so that you're moving forward.
You're right. And you know, when it comes to backwards planning, that's like the biggest thing. So it doesn't matter what action you take first, right? It just, as long as you keep that end state, that end objective in mind, it doesn't really matter which step you take action on. If it's slightly bigger or slightly smaller, at the end of the day, if that action supports the end state, then it's not going to hurt to do it.
Right.
I mean, if it doesn't have any prerequisites or anything like that, then just go, because that's one thing that you can check off. And then chances are, no matter what action you take, it's going to change the next 2 or 3 steps anyway. So
that's right.
You got to adapt. You got to be willing to move, and you cannot stay stagnant. But you mentioned something about comfort when you were talking. I got to bring this up because, you know, it affects decisiveness so much. We talked about that confidence, and a lot of times new leaders, they run into the problem where they're just not comfortable doing a bunch of things. So one thing that I would always brief my down trace leaders on when I as I started moving up the chain a little bit, is I would say, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yep.
Do hard things. And you gotta be willing to do that. And if you go into it with that mindset, when it comes to that moment where something really, really gets difficult, and that the only way for me to articulate it is when that oh shit moment comes up, you go, okay, you take a few seconds, take a deep breath, and just come up with something.
Right.
And if you have to call in a lifeline, that might be the something. But get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I tell everybody that all the time. It's just the most important thing to understand, that leaders just need to be that person that does the hard stuff.
That's right. Part of that discomfort is also, you can kind of mitigate it a little bit by understanding that not every decision you make is going to be the right one.
Yes.
That's also one of the hard things about leadership.
Yep.
It's something that people struggle with because they feel like the spotlight is on me. I'm the leader. I need to make the right call all the time. Well, that's the laws of statistics are against you there. You are not going to be right 100% of the time, which that only validates the fact of, let's take some small steps, because you can make a wrong decision on a small step and quickly recover. It's making the wrong decision on a big step that is much harder. There's way more risk. So understanding that you're never going to be perfect, all your decisions will not be correct, and part of that helps you get out of that kind of, not wanting to do uncomfortable things. Like, you know what? It's okay to not be right all the time. So let's do the difficult thing. Make the call. It may be wrong, it may be right, but you've got to make it so that you know. Otherwise, you don't know. It's like, you know, hesitating to ask someone something when it's like, look, the worst thing you can do is say no. But if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So you got to do something. You got to move it along.
Yeah.
Take a small step.
You got to keep moving the needle. I mean, when you're especially in a production environment or a construction environment, or really any work environment, to be quite honest with you, you just got to keep the things rolling. That's what the manager's job is to kind of take all that crap that's going on and just figure out how to keep things going without screwing it up, which you're going to screw something up along the lines, but that's okay. I think that one thing that a lot of, I would say, senior people, whether it's the manager over a supervisor or maybe a director over a manager, they fail to do when that promotion comes along, and or maybe they just get hired into that position as a fresh person, is they don't tell them that we expect you to make mistakes.
Right.
And if you're not given that validation as far as permission is concerned, then it creates this feeling in your stomach constantly that you are afraid to make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And so if anybody's listening to this right now and you're hearing this and you're in that position, or if you watch this later on and it's the replay, understand that your people have to be given permission to make mistakes so that they can be more confident in themselves. They're going to move forward and they're going to do more things if they know that it's okay once in a while for them to make a mistake. It's a growth opportunity, not an F up. You know what I mean? It's a great thing. It's not a horrible thing.
That's where the win or learn mentality comes in that you and I have talked about on numerous lives. It's not a win or lose, it's win or learn. If things don't go your way, that decision that you made wasn't the right one. What did you learn from it so that you don't make the bad decision again, and so that you can recover and move forward?
Yes.
What are some ways that we can help leaders to be a little more confident in the decisions that they make? What are some things that people should be keeping in mind that help with that decisiveness?
Ooh, that's a good question. You
So while you think, I'll
here for a second. No, I think that, there are many things that you can do, but sometimes, when you notice that somebody's uncomfortable, first of all, before you even give them a task, make sure that you're kind of looking at them, doing that active listening, active communication sort of thing. And if you see that look in their eyes, that that they're like, oh crap, what does that even mean?
Mhm.
Then just say, can you repeat back to me what I just said, and let me know if there's any if there are any questions or issues that you have with that. And if they can't even repeat the whole thing back to you, or at least the general idea of it, then they're struggling.
Yes.
And then afterwards, if you've gotten past that point and they're in the execution stage, then I think the way that it's a best practice for me, you got to be paying attention to your people as often as you can. You can't be everywhere all the time, but pay attention. If you see somebody struggling, grab them by the hand and say, follow me. Show them the way so that they know the way. And don't be afraid to do that, because when you show that you're willing to lead by example, you're also building up their confidence in them and you. And, that creates another level of that trust that we keep on talking about.
Yeah. A few things that come to my mind in that situation is, like, what are the filters that we could be using for decision making? It could be, is this decision or this intended outcome aligned with the culture of our organization? If not, then it's an easy decision. We don't do that, right? It doesn't align with our values. It's not aligned with our culture. Is it going to move us closer to an intended strategic goal of the organization? If not, Easy decision. No, we don't do it. If yes, then let's move forward. So I'm always looking for filters that I can use to help that decision making process, to make it easy, right? Okay, is it going to affect the morale of my team in a negative way? Then we probably shouldn't do it.
Don't
Is
mean
it
to
gonna
interrupt, Chris. Tell them about the traffic light.
Oh,
Tell them about the traffic light. It's a
yeah.
good one.
So the traffic light, leadership traffic light is, it's about delegation, and it's also a helpful tool in helping your people to make decisions without having to influence you. So anybody who drives a vehicle knows what a traffic light is: red, yellow, green. So if you can establish these parameters within your team that you're leading, or establish it with the person that you report to, green, just like when you're driving a car, means go. Keep your foot on the gas, keep going, business as usual. So if you can define what are the limits of authority that are within business as usual, and you're giving someone that authority to make a decision, or you're claiming for yourself, I don't need to bother my boss, I'm going to make this decision. Green, rock and roll. Yellow is proceed with caution. So yellow is something that is still within your limits of authority, but it's something that needs to be on the radar of the person that you're reporting to. Or if you're the leader in the situation, your person has to just put it on your radar. No action is required. You have confidence that they're going to make the right decision, but something something about the situation could escalate, and you'd rather know about it and not have to deal with it than get blindsided by it, and then all hell breaks loose. And then red is stop. Red is when you as the leader need to take action. Your person hands it off to you and says, all right, this has already escalated to yellow, now it's red, you need to get involved. Or if I'm subordinate to somebody, is when I hand it off to them with all the information that they need. But keeping that traffic light in mind, it's such an easy analogy, right? If you drive a car, you know what those colors mean: red, yellow, green. Stop, proceed with caution, or keep your foot on the gas. It can be applied to the decision making process as well, and giving people the comfort and the confidence that, all right, I believe in you to be able to make decisions up until this threshold. You own green. I don't even need to know what you're doing in the green area. Yellow, radar, red. Now it's my turn to step in as the leader and help to come up with a solution and solve this issue.
And you know what? The reason I asked you to bring that up is because I absolutely love that. I always actually outlined that in their initial in any time that I would have a leader working for me, a down trace leader, whether it be a corporal or a sergeant or whatever the case may be when I was in the military, but a supervisor or a manager working for me when I was at a slightly higher level in the civilian world, I would make sure that that was aligned out in the initial expectation. This is what you need to know. I didn't call it a traffic light, but I love the way that you frame that, because it makes it so much easier to understand. I do encourage every single one of the people that work for me, it doesn't matter where I'm at, that if they're even the slightest bit uncomfortable and they just think that they need a little bit of help, it doesn't hurt to put it on my radar or ask me a question, because we have to feel vulnerable sometimes.
Sure.
And when we're vulnerable, sometimes just a little bit of validation will make you a lot more confident. And so I would rather them ask me the question than to just move forward and I'm not going to say screw something up, because it's okay to make mistakes, but if they know it's going to go wrong before it even starts, then I'd like to help them. It's
Yeah.
just a lot better that way. That way, whatever intent whatever the intent is, and whatever you may be unsure of, it's made a lot more clear to you, so that the next time that thing comes along, you're a lot more confident with it.
And the beauty of that tool is that it can grow with the individual.
Mm-hmm.
When someone is a brand new team leader and you're the person who's leading multiple team leaders. Their green is like 3 bullet points. And then the yellow is maybe a wider margin. Red is maybe wider. But as that person grows in their ability, in their skill set, in their confidence, then you start adding on additional layers of responsibility. Their limit of authority becomes wider. So it's an evolving tool so that you can set it up now and say, okay, look, you've got the authority to make decisions up to $500. Anything over $500, I need to be made aware of. And then it could grow up to now you've got the ability to make decisions up to $20,000, whatever it is, as they progress in their role, in their career, and in their abilities. So that's one of the other things about that traffic light tool is that it is not stagnant, it's dynamic, and it can be applied in so many different ways.
I agree. And when it comes to decisiveness, really just helping your down trace leaders or even your ground level employees just become more confident, because you don't have to be in a management position to be out there making decisions on a regular basis every day. And so making sure that whatever controls you put in there, you got to make sure that they allow people to make a certain amount of decision in their role.
Right.
And people need that. I mean, nobody's going to want to get promoted if they know they're going to be micromanaged.
That's right.
So they need to be given a little bit of leeway where they're at. Once they build that confidence, then you're absolutely going to want to promote them. And when it comes to preparing people for a management position, you can't do that if they're not confident. They have to be confident, because if they're not even confident to do things by themselves or to ask for help when they're at the ground level, then when you promote them to a manager, how are they going to be confident enough to be able to address those same things with their team? I mean, there's a ripple effect there, right? And there are a lot of people that are comfortable working at the ground level, and that's okay. But there are also going to be a lot of people that are going to be looking for broadening opportunities in their career. And those people want to be given a little bit of authority, and they don't have to be promoted to have that.
Right.
You'll know the ones that don't want it, because they're going to be saying things like, well, if I wanted to do that, I'd be a manager. Got it. Moving right along.
That's right. One of my other favorite tricks is it's psychological in nature, but it is super effective. That when one of your subordinates comes to you looking for a decision, if you can say to them, well, what would you do?
Yes.
And then you're not placing the decision on their shoulders at that moment, but you're saying to them, okay, you've laid out the facts. What would you do? If what they would do aligns 90% with how you would do it, your answer can be, that's exactly what I would do too. You're on the right path. Move forward. Like, what a confidence boost when the person that you report to says, that's exactly what I would do. So move forward. It doesn't have to be 100%. It will never be 100%. And so you can do that. It's a psychological trick, for lack of a better word, to build that confidence and help people to make those decisions. The only time that I would get involved beyond that is like, if there's something that's potentially catastrophic in how they're going to execute, I might call that out. But if you're 90% aligned with how the leader in this case, would do it, then I'm going to let you roll, because maybe that other 10% is actually better than how I would do it. So
that's right. You should always generalize your guidance and let them come up with their own solutions, which, by the way, that is called coaching.
It is. And that's something that leaders need to be comfortable doing as well. You need to use your experience to coach others to build that same level of experience and beyond.
Yes, I agree. I completely agree. And I'm looking at the time. It looks like we're almost done here.
Dude, we've got like 7 seconds left. We always go a minute or so over.
We do.
But any final words from you, JJ, before we wrap it up on today's Leadership Live?
I just want to say to the audience that, decisiveness is important. You have to be a confident, decisive person for the sake of the people that are working under your charge, which, by the way, your peers and your seniors sometimes need that too, because everybody has confidence issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're that person that is willing to take decisive action in the absence of orders, which is part of the NCO creed, by the way, then you're going to be looked at as an extreme asset, because they know when times get tough, they can call on Chris, or they can call on JJ, or they can call on Joe Snuffy. And when it comes to decisiveness, which was our topic today, that is why it's so important.
Couldn't agree more. And we haven't used Joe Snuffy as an example for a while. We may have to bring him back for a cameo in an upcoming episode.
He's been sleeping, man.
Typical Joe Snuffy. You know what? I couldn't say it any better than you did, JJ. So I'm just going to wrap it up there. I'm not going to try to throw any more words of wisdom in there, because you pretty much hit the nail on the head.
Thank you.
So from JJ, from me, thank you all for tuning in for another episode of Leadership Live. If you got something out of this episode, please drop comments wherever you're watching it on social media. We will engage. Please share it with others. Please like it so that the word gets out to other people. And as always, continue to go out there and lead, be the best that you can be, and we will see you next time.